on my 3 years experience, as I said at the beginning of my talk, as a failed policy advisor to the government of Sri Lanka. And I have two main sets of observations. The first is that this government came into power with almost wholly devoid of talent and expertise, quite in contrast to the economic team that was put in place in or soon after July 1977. The LTTE and the JVP in combination did a spectacular job at destroying the best of Sri Lanka's political elite. And the new government also came into power without an economic plan, and it never developed one. What it eventually came up with was two things. Firstly, a Christmas tree wish list of things that were going to happen by 2025. And secondly, rhetorical nonsense about a Sri Lankan takeoff and Sri Lanka becoming the next Singapore, which I consider to be Orwellian duck speak. In George Orwell's 1984, one of the terms of newspeak is duck speak. Duck speak is when the vocal cords and the way they're exercised are completely divorced from other bodily and external reality. Was observing somewhat close up the dire state of the Sri Lankan state, or in the academic jargon, a serious lack of state capacity. And I came to the conclusion quite quickly that even fairly simple reforms were difficult and perhaps in some cases almost impossible to push through because of the dysfunction of the Sri Lankan state. It's not a Sri Lankan exception. You find echoes of this in other parts of the world as well. But, and this is a very complex set of problems, but let me just, by way of example, point to something very simple. The utter shambles of high-level meetings in government ministries, some of which I attended, where they invariably start late, they end late, there is hardly a coherent agenda, there are 5 or 6 different people talking at the same time, veering off in 5 or 6 different directions, everybody talking, nobody listening, no one taking notes, and no conclusion. And then the process starts all over again. And of course it gets worse. I'm pretty sure that a Mahesh Amelian or a Hanif Yusuf do not run their meetings that way. That brings me to the present, and this is where I'm going to end, with some thoughts about the future. Now, I think it was 3 years ago I gave an Advocata Institute lecture which I titled Sri Lanka 3 Scenarios for the Future, and I wrote it out subsequently in the Daily FT. And I presented those 3 scenarios, one of takeoff, economic takeoff, one of continued drift, and the third one of relapse into a kind of Rajapaksa government package of illiberal democracy, centralized crony capitalism, China as first friend, and a Sinhala Buddhist first ethnic agenda. Now, as we stand or sit here today, with elections not far away, there's of course no sign in the foreseeable future of that first scenario of takeoff.